Hello, I'm Food Daniel, here to make my predictions for the WFA Week 5 games. These are games to be played on May 9th. Here we go. Columbus Comets hosting the Cleveland Fusion. Cleveland Fusion at the Columbus Comets. Well, Cleveland had their way with Columbus rather handily earlier in the year, and I think they will again. Easy win by Columbus by 3 or 4 touchdowns. Derby City Dynamite, the Detroit Dark Angels. This one could be interesting. These are two, below average teams, but neither one of them are really humiliating themselves, unless you count the Dark Angels' blowout loss to Chicago, and that's not humiliating. That's expected. So I'm going to predict this will be a close one. I'm going to say Detroit by 2 touchdowns or less. Yeah, I think that'll be a close one. On the other hand, Indy crashed the Chicago Force. Will not be close. Gruesome win for Chicago. Not because the Crash is a bad team. They're certainly not. They're a good, solid team, but nobody comes close to the Force. No. Here's a good one. Tampa Bay Inferno at the Atlanta Phoenix. These are 2 above-average teams. Atlanta is well above average. I think Atlanta is going to win this one by between 2 or 3 touchdowns. But I think if I'm in error, I'm probably going to be in error. I think I'm not giving Tampa Bay enough credit. I say it's Atlanta winning by 2 or 3 touchdowns, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's closer than that. Okay. Orlando Anarchy at the Jacksonville Dixie Blues. Well, Orlando, they forfeited last week against Atlanta. That was a home forfeit for Orlando. Certainly hope they're able to finish out the season. But against Jacksonville, won't matter. Gruesome win by Jacksonville. Another gruesome game. Miami Fury at the Daytona Wave Runners. Gruesome win for Miami. Tulsa Threat at the Kansas City Titans. Well, the Tulsa Threat surprised me and pleased me by upending my prediction. I predicted they would lose to the Mile High Blaze. Nope, they shut out the Blaze last week, 28-0. And I'm glad of it because I love the Threat. All right. Well done, Ashley Moran and company. Well, I'd love to see them take out the Kansas City Titans, but that ain't going to happen, I don't think. I could see Kansas City winning this one by 4 or 5 touchdowns. I'd love to be wrong, though. St. Louis Slam at the Minnesota Machine. Slam coming off of a very exciting loss to the KC Titans last week. St. Louis lost 27-17. Special thanks to Lon Turner, who was texting me updates throughout the game. I appreciate it. At the Minnesota Machine, I think the Slam will have not too much difficulty. I'll say the Slam by 3 or 4 touchdowns. In Texas, Arlington Impact at the Dallas Elite. Okay, Arlington is a much better team than last year. They're a real good team. But just like Chicago, Dallas, they really are elite. So I see Dallas winning this one by, I'm going to give Arlington credit and say it'll be by 3 or 4 touchdowns instead of being flat out gruesome. I think Arlington can hang in there for a while, but not against Dallas. Okay, in South Texas, the Austin Outlaws versus the South Texas Lady Crushers. Well, Austin's not having an easy go of it this year, and the Lady Crushers, of course, a brand new team. They're still getting the hang of this. I think Austin's going to win this one, simply because the Lady Crushers are still getting the hang of this. I'll say Austin by 2 to 3 touchdowns. Houston Power against the Arkansas Wildcats. The Houston Power. The Wildcats, they're not a bad team. In their division with the Tulsa Threat and the Acadiana Zydeco, those 3 teams, the Wildcats, the Threat, and the Zydeco, when they play against each other, they have real good close matchups. But the Power are several cuts above that. So I don't think Houston will have much difficulty winning this game. I'll say Houston by 3 or 4 touchdowns. There's one game in the Northwest, the Seattle Majestics at the Everett Rain. The Seattle Majestics, they're still the top dog in the Northwest, but I get the sense it's not by as much as it used to be. Everett, continues to be a good, solid team. And the Tacoma Trauma, wow, they're the feel-good story of the WFA this year. Seattle's not, with the exception of, last week's victory over the 13-player Utah Blitz, they're not massacring teams like they were last year, but they're still top shelf. I think they'll beat the Everett Rain, but not by much. I'm going to say by 3 touchdowns or less. Yes, 3 touchdowns or less. Okay, Central Cal War Angels, the San Diego Surge. I was at the War Angels game last week. The War Angels, they're an excellent team. They're a team that'll go deep into the playoffs. And they're a good, hard-hitting team. Tons of key hits. If you've seen the highlight reel I made, tons of great hits by these War Angels players. I know it's a cliche to say they play physical football, but they really do play physical football. Oh, yes. Now, what does that mean when you're playing against the San Diego Surge? It means that instead of losing by 60 points like the War Angels did last year, they'll lose by only 40 points. So the War Angels will score some touchdowns against the Surge, but they'll also give up a bunch of touchdowns. So, yeah, I'll say the Surge by 4 or 5 touchdowns. But as before, I'm not going to say it's going to be gruesome because I think the War Angels will score enough that San Diego will have to pay attention to what they're doing. Okay, and on the opposite extreme, the West Coast Lightning at the Arizona Assassins. Okay, these are two, I hate to say cellar dwellers, but that's the only phrase that comes to mind. These are two cellar dwellers. But as a lifelong Tampa Bay Bucks fan, I know that when two cellar dwellers meet, it can often lead to a good, close, exciting game. And I think that's what's going to happen here. I think the Lightning and Assassins will have a game that will be decided by 2 touchdowns or less. And I'm gonna guess the Assassins are going to win this simply because they're the home team and so the traveling West Coast Lightning will have a few players left behind. I say Arizona will win this by 2 touchdowns or less. That'll be a close game. One game that I don't think will be close, the Sin City Sun Devils at the Ventura Wolfpack. Now, I saw the Sin City Sun Devils lose to the Central Cal War Angels last week, and like the War Angels, they put on some brutal hits. They are a physical football team. And, if you look at the standings, you see they're 0-3. Well, that's more because they've played 3 real good opponents. Well, their next 3 games are all against teams that really aren't so hot. So I think by the time they get to 6 games played, they'll be 3-3. The Sin City Sun Devils. They'll beat the Ventura Wolfpack, no problem. It'll be a gruesome win for the Sin City Sun Devils. Gruesome. And finally, DC Divas at the Central Maryland Seahawks. Well, right off the bat, of course, first thing you got to say, congratulations to the Divas defeating the Boston Militia in Boston last week. I know for the past few years, DC has lost to Boston, so this has got to feel great. That's got to feel great for you. I know I predicted that Boston was going to win, so I blew that, but I also predicted that game was going to be a close, refreshing, cool glass of water after all the blowouts in the previous week. I got that part right. But against the Central Maryland Seahawks, gruesome win for the DC Divas. Gruesome. And that completes my predictions for WFA Week 5. Thank you.